Okay, so great. Because I don't want to go against my word, we can begin now. Good morning to you, all of you, and I welcome you to this webinar session organized by the Newmark Group. Your presence here today just emphasizes for me that you are very much interested in this topic and are ready to contribute your expertise and discussions into some of these topics that we have slated to be discussed by our panelists. Today, we are going to talk about key trends in the ever-changing PR landscape. My name is Wilfred Kojo Kedape. I'm a senior accounts manager and the head of public relations at the Newmark Group. For over 20 years, the Newmark Group, a Pan-African communications and brand positioning firm, has leveraged the power of brand trust to foster growth of businesses and organizations. This we have done by assembling a team of brilliant, young, energetic individuals across the Pan-African country to support brands in their communication efforts. And so today, we have organized this session as part of to commemorate World PR Day to discuss key trends in an ever-changing PR landscape and get experts' opinion on what trends are affecting the public relations practice across Africa and the world. To help us do this discussion, as I have indicated, we have assembled a very good team. We have as panelists, Mr. Gilbert Manirakiza, who is the CEO of the Newmark Group, one of Africa's fastest growing advisory firms, specializing in strategic communications, research, digital marketing, and experiential management. Gilbert, can we have a wave from you?
Hello, Wilfred. Thank you for availing yourself to moderate this session and for pulling all the logistical and all the elements together so that we can be able to hold this session today. I'm very excited by the panel that we have, and I'm very honored indeed to be part of this activity. Newmark, as you have said, is always looking for ways to partner with organizations, individuals, and all stakeholders that would like to use relationships and the power of collaboration to find solutions to some of the biggest challenges that Africa and the world are facing. And we know currently that this is a time when the world is facing significant challenges that require major collaborations, but we haven't been seeing the collaboration that is needed, and PR comes in to help to solve some of these challenges by fostering the right types of collaboration. So thank you everyone for coming to this webinar, not just those who are attending on Zoom, but also those who are joining us via Facebook Live, and also all those of you who will be watching this recording when we put it up on our various platforms. Kindly engage, share your thoughts, do throw in a word here and there on our chat and Q&A section so that we can be able to have this as a very interactive conversation. It's fantastic also to see that we have been able to attract attendance from various parts of Africa and the world, and we are looking forward to an amazing conversation. Welcome everyone.
All right, thank you, Gilbert. We also have on panel Natasha. Natasha is the Director General and Associate in Atinora. She has been a lobbyist for nearly 20 years towards the European ecosystem and advises clients in defining their influence and strategies and writing their advocacy papers to promote requests to the European decision makers. Natasha, can you give us a wave? Just a wave. Great. We also have on call Mr. Komla Boami, who is an expert at aligning communications with brand visions and values. He is experienced in networking with media outlets to deliver compelling messages and very prominent in media management. He has served as the public relations manager for the Ghana Education Service and has also managed top brands. Komla is currently the Director of Communications for Zipline. Komla, can you give us a wave? Great. The next on the panel is Maureen. Maureen is a passionate aviator with 12 years of aviation experience at the African Airlines Association, called AFRA, the leading trade association of African airlines. She has coordinated various initiatives that facilitates beneficial cooperation among African airlines to adopt and implement cost-effective common solutions to address market needs. Maureen, can you give us a wave so we can know you? Great. And finally, we have Alex Ewiti, who is a highly experienced PR practitioner in Kenya with 16 years of experience in local and international agencies, and is the CEO of Alexander Public Relations. He has previously worked as the Director of Communications at Isipu Games and Pan-African Gaming Group. His experts include strategic communications, crisis management, and media relations. Alex, can you give us a wave? Because of time, I understand they are very resourceful individuals who have joined us, company heads, organizational leaders who have joined us, but we cannot introduce you all. So I indulge you that just introduce yourself in the chats so that we can acknowledge you at the right time. And thank you very much once again. Today we are all gathered to this webinar to discuss key trends in an ever-changing PR landscape. And as I've indicated, these individuals who we have assembled as panelists will be helping us to understand the key trends shaping the public relations practice in Africa and across the world. Gilbert, I would like to begin first with you because you have been very much active in the last 48 hours. At yesterday's session with the media and PR practitioners, you highlighted some relevant conversations about the connecting relationship in both practice. Can you walk us through some of the pinpoints even before we delve into the conversation of key PR trends?
Yeah, thank you, Wilfred. Indeed, yesterday we had a number of interactions with our colleagues from the Pan-African media landscape. We had a cross-section of journalists and PR practitioners, and also journalists who are now PR practitioners. And the idea was to look at how we can leverage and harness the collaboration between PR practitioners and journalists for the betterment of outcomes and to achieve the role of the ultimate role of PR, which is really to build trust-based relationships between entities, individuals on the one hand, and their stakeholders on the other. And I have to say it was one of the richest conversations I've been part of in recent times. We had some fantastic thoughts, and obviously we are going to upload the video for that webinar and share it with all of you. We had a massive attendance for that session, both on Zoom as well as on Facebook. And indeed, it was deserved attendance. In some of the perspectives that came out were quite insightful. For instance, there was a clear articulation of the fact that public relations and strategic communications, generally speaking, which is a field that we are all involved in as panelists here, but also as many of the attendees. This field has the potential to help economies, particularly in Africa, grow much faster, and they have the potential to accelerate the achievement of SDGs and other economic goals, mainly by helping governments and other entities and even private sector to create strong relationships, not just within national borders, but also beyond and globally. But it was noted that not many countries are making use of the power and the tools of public relations and strategic communications. And one of the recommendations was that more countries and more companies, and by countries I mean governments, should embrace the role of strategic communications and PR more specifically, and perhaps we can even add advocacy because Natasha is going to talk to us about that. And I believe that one of the roles, one of the functions of strategic communications includes strategic advocacy. And the idea was to recommend that we see more uptake of this across the continent and globally. Another key point that came out was the fact that the media landscape is becoming much more fragmented than we have ever seen. It's becoming, we are having many more channels right now, and that pushes all of us, both on the media side and on the PR side, to grow our learning abilities, our aptitude to adapt to new, to an increasingly changing landscape. And I'm glad that the topic today is going to tackle this ever-changing ecosystem. And essentially, one of the things that came out very clearly is almost a slogan, is that PR professionals and strategic comms professionals need to think more like journalists, and journalists need to also think more like PR and strategic comms professionals. And both of them need to become much more tech savvy than before. So it's acknowledged that we cannot just be PR professionals pure without really thinking about what the media professional is going through, how they think, and vice versa. But being tech savvy is critical for both professions, because without that, it's going to be very hard for us to successfully adapt to this changing environment. That said, even if we're going to be tech savvy, even though we need to be tech savvy, and perhaps we'll deepen the conversation on this, because yesterday we were not able to delve very deep into things like the impact of machine learning, AI, cloud computing on the practice of strategic communications. What was highlighted is that technology should not necessarily be feared, because it's not likely to replace professionals, both on the media and on the strategic communication side. However, early adopters and users of these tools of AI and machine learning to accelerate and to increase efficiency, to become much more practical at what they do. For example, in terms of research, there's no more need to spend hours and hours doing some of the research tasks. Those who adopt this are going to do very well, as opposed to those who fear and adopt these technologies later. Maybe the last point I can point out is that PR professionals as well as media professionals need to equip themselves with the tools and the skills to be able to detect malicious content, to be able to detect disinformation, misinformation, particularly in this era where we are likely to see a lot of AI or technology-generated content that may be malicious and geared towards influencing publics, as we have actually seen in various contexts, the most famous probably being the US election, the one that brought Trump into power. So those are some of the thoughts and perspectives that we saw coming up yesterday. Obviously, I might not have done full justice to the rich conversation that we had yesterday, and to get the full breadth of this, I would invite everyone to check out the video that we are going to upload probably today or tomorrow, and we'll send everyone a link so that you can have a look at this.
Thank you, Gilbert. A very interesting perspective you have shared from yesterday's session. One thing I'm particularly happy about is your description of how machines may in the future take away jobs, and a lot of our panelists at yesterday's session disagreed, and there was some conversation around it. But we'll come back to that area, so we discuss even further. But in your conversation, you indicated you spoke about global affiliations, and Natasha, this is where I'll come to you. Global affiliations and partnerships have been suggested to hold great prospects for growth in industry knowledge. What values does membership in these affiliate groups offer in building strong global networks?
Thank you, first of all, for inviting me. As you said, I'm the General Director of Atenora Consulting, which is a lobbying company. So we use public affairs in order to create links between businesses and decision makers. And public relations are part of the work. They are tools that we use in order to influence the landscape, the decision-making process. So I'm very happy to be there. Maybe allow me to answer this question first with my European angle. As you know, in Europe, we had war for centuries. But then the European Union was built on this idea that creating partnership make us stronger. But this partnership must be rooted in shared values. And step after step, we were able to create what is today the European Union, place in the world where we have growth, where we have big companies that are building very strong ties among the people, and this makes us stronger even outside the world, because with this partnership, we are more credible when we discuss with the United States or with China, for instance. This is the same logic for a global partnership among businesses. As you know, we are a member of the Public Relations Global Network. I joined this network in 2007. And what I love with this network is this idea that we can have global vision, but we are all best in the class in our own market. So we have the best of the two worlds. We have a broad vision. Within the network, we have, for instance, a learning academy where we can exchange everywhere in the world about trends, about what has been changed in PR landscape or in the link with the media community. And this allows us to make better proposals for the clients while taking into account the specific knowledge, the specific market, because in the European Union, we have this motto, united in diversity. This is the same logic. Together, we are stronger because we have more credibility, more expertise, more talents, but we also have this possibility to offer a tailor-made solution in terms of public relation solutions.
Great, Natasha. What I get from your conversation is that indeed affiliations are a strong force for advocacy, and which I agree very much with you. Myself, I have always held the view that if you have a medical problem, you see the doctor. If you have a media problem, you see the journalist. If you have an agricultural problem, you see the agriculturist. But why is it that when you have a PR problem, you don't want to see the public relations experts? And this point, I would move on to Maureen, because strong values have been indicated as a key component of affiliations. And I would like to find out from you, Maureen, because you are a member of AFRA, an airline industry. How have you utilized some of these trends in developing solutions for AFRA?
Thank you, Wilfred, and hello to all our guests. And we thank Newmark for the opportunity to organize this very insightful discussion on PR. And first of all, to wish each and every one of you a happy World PR Day. To just give a little perspective on AFRA. AFRA is the African Airlines Association, founded in 1968. And our main mandate is to promote, serve African airlines and to champion the common interests of African airlines. And looking at our mandate, we have got a specific mission to have a sustainable, interconnected, and affordable air transport industry in Africa. And this we achieve through various initiatives and actions that we do. And we have got key pillars, 5 pillars of action. And one of these pillars today, I think we are looking at the aspect of collaboration. AFRA is a partner for collaboration for the development of air transport in industry in Africa. And this we could not achieve without the power of PR. And for AFRA, for the aspect of PR for many years, in fact, spanning almost to 5 decades, there was a lot of initiatives that we were doing, but without that strong PR strategy, the industry did not really have a lot of knowledge of all these things that we were being done at AFRA. And what we did is that there was a change of leadership in 2018. And from the change of leadership in 2018, we had to take a deliberate action to put in place a strategy for PR and measures to ensure that AFRA takes its position as the leading trade association for airlines in Africa, which today we have become that. And why did we have to do that? Aviation is a key contributor to economic development. Just looking at Africa alone, aviation supports 7.7 million jobs. And in terms of GDP, 63 billion US dollars. And looking at the various factors that affect the air transport industry, for example, we have the issue of the 3 AUC projects that will push for the Africa we want. Opening up of African skies through the single African air transport market. We also have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, the protocol of movement of people. We have various challenges affecting airline industry. There is a need for a strong advocacy, a strong airline association that will push forward the common interest of African airlines. And this we cannot achieve without a strong PR. We have to take this deliberate action in 2018. And through the engagement of a strong PR agency and a team that was enhanced, we have come to see that AFRA has taken a position as a visible leader of air transport industry. And in terms of storytelling, we have worked to create strong collaborations with the media fraternity, and AFRA has become positioned as the aviation thought leader and a point of reference, a go-to for the air transport industry in Africa. In fact, if you look at African data on air transport, there has been a very big gap, which we have in the last 6 years closed, and we are a repertoire, a hub for all this good information, a source of rich information and data. We have also put in place proactive measures to engage media through collaboration. There has been what they call the concept of the media labs. We have done some media labs with our African airline members. And what we intend to do is to do more of that to create a very close collaboration with the members of the fourth estate, looking at the fact that this is a key aspect to drive forward the PR, the PR strategy of the organization. And also to ensure that we engage with our stakeholders. The kind of business that we do as an association relies greatly on trust, relies greatly on partnerships and developing credibility with our stakeholders. And having achieved that, we find that we have increased our member base. In fact, from 2018 to 2023, our members have grown by 25% because we are now able to be visible, more be visible out there. And there is the trust that we are creating with our stakeholders, that AFRA is pushing forward all these initiatives. And very importantly, we are communicating all these stories of the developments that we are pushing forward to move the needle on various issues and that have been arranged under the 5 strategic pillars of AFRA. So we have achieved this through strong collaborations, and our business has been able to grow because we have built the trust, we have built the confidence of the air transport industry, and we have taken the place as the leading air transport association for airlines in Africa. Thank you.
Great. Maureen, just a follow-up. One of the COVID-19 was a very difficult moment for all of us, including businesses. And one of the industries that were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic is the aviation industry. What PR shortfalls did you notice within this period with regards to communication and partnership, because we had to limit physical movements? And how did you succumb or overcome some of these challenges in terms of what COVID-19 presented to us as a challenge?
That's a very good question in light of how we turned a crisis into an opportunity. COVID-19 hit the air transport industry, the hospitality industry as well, really hard. In fact, when things were brought to lockdown, some industries had some movement, some traction, but for the air transport industry and hospitality, it came to almost a complete standstill, except for the cargo aspect that was essential for moving the medical equipment and repatriating people to their host countries. And during this period, what we had as AFRA, we were also similarly affected. The main challenge was many entities cut down on their budgets. And you see, when you cut down on budgets, many of the casualties, in fact, one of the main casualties will be the PR budget. Many companies will see that we need to cut down on this, cut down on the budget for training. There was almost zero travel. And looking at the fact that PR, as critical as it is, we had to re-engineer and think out of the box on how can we do things differently. We had to leverage on the digitalization and the power of organizing virtual meetings. And in fact, what we ensured that we did, we had extra, and in fact, a lot of activity going on at the AFRA Secretariat on the communication, because one, we had to inform the airline members of developments and measures that they had to put in place to navigate out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we did in the month of April. Remember, COVID, the lockdowns came in the month of March, but we did not really take time. We had to really think quickly. The month of April, we organized a webinar for the airline industry, whereby we put in place an action plan. We had 9 pillars of that action plan. From a very engaging manner, it was the airlines and the stakeholders that were coming up with the solutions. How can we effectively navigate out of this pandemic? And we went to put in place an action plan, measures to implement all these actions. And it is what actually helped many airlines to navigate out of the crisis. There was the important aspect of advocacy, engaging governments for the border protocol harmonization. And eventually, as the lockdowns were really being relaxed, there were a number of instances whereby we had got industry action that had to be put across to the governments. And we also had to look at future. How do we as an industry navigate out of a crisis should another crisis come after COVID? So there was a number of webinars that took place to make the industry ready, thinking ahead. So during this period, there was a lot of online activity. In fact, the year 2020, the second half, and the year 2021, we did the highest numbers of meetings organized by AFRA, and those meetings that AFRA attended as a key stakeholder. And we launched initiatives. We launched in 2020, in the month of July, what we call the monthly industry briefing for the entire industry. So what we do during this briefing up to today, once every month on the last Wednesday, we talk to the airline stakeholders on developments that are happening in the industry, what AFRA is doing, and then you keep it open to take inputs from the airlines and other stakeholders. What are the other issues that we need to keep an eye on? And we report on a status update on what we are doing to tackle those issues.
Great.
So if you look at how the COVID pandemic hit us and how we came out of it, I think it was more of a very proactive approach and thinking of out-of-the-box solutions that actually turned the crisis into an opportunity that has helped AFRA to engage more stakeholders and to continue with our mandate. And what I can tell you is that for the year 2021, we signed the highest numbers of MOUs with the industry stakeholders in the history of AFRA. We signed a total of 6 MOUs. In the year 2022, we signed 4 of them. So we turned this into an opportunity. Thank you.
Great, great. Thank you, Maureen, for that extensive explanation of how you leveraged public relations in the time of crisis. Both Gilbert and Natasha have spoken about strong affiliations and growth in technology. Now we'll move on to a media person who has been very much with the media and knows a lot about that. Komla, one of the discussions that have come up in terms of PR trends is the fragmentation of the media. The media has come up many times in this discussion, and I want to know, what developing trends do you see impacting the public relation practice, particularly in Ghana and in Africa?
Well, thank you, Wilfred. Let me also just associate with the other earlier speakers to commend Newmark for this insightful, conversation we're having. And I'm sure that meeting, industry experts all together to share ideas, to collaborate, is one of the great ways of influencing public relation practice in our region. And to talk about future, I want to begin by particularly talking about where we are today. I'm sure if this conference or this seminar were to be organized a few years back, Newmark would have been paying for my business flight ticket, or maybe AFRA would have been sponsoring me to fly all the way to Nairobi and to have this conversation, and with its associated cost. But here we are. I'm based here in Ghana, showcasing our African heritage by wearing this smock, and everybody around the world is able to see me in this particular location. So the future has actually started from where we are today, that you don't have to move from point A to point B in order to know to meet your audiences and to have conversation. But if you look at the practice of PR and of course the media, I sometimes associate this practice to the evolution of the butterfly. The butterfly we see today has gone through a lot of stages to what it has gotten to. PR media practice is also moving in lots of stages. And if you ask me what the future is for media practice or PR practice, I have no idea. Years ago, businesses wouldn't want to be on social media for their social marketing or even for their communication. Many banks and other multinationals were very conservative, and they thought that social media was not going to be a very good tool to reach out to audiences. The trend has changed. A few weeks ago, we're home, we woke up and we're told that there is another innovation called Thread, and everybody was jumping onto Thread. And Thread has become the highest subscribed kind of innovation compared to its peers in the history of this innovation. But importantly, the practice and the practitioners themselves are not oblivious of the fact that there are continuous changes in the industry. And of course, if you go to theory, the diffusion of innovation theory, put that properly to suggest that there is always going to be innovation, and this innovation would, walk us through the practice of media and the practice of PR across the globe. However, within that innovation also, there are 2 groups of people: the early adopters and the laggards. Those who, oh, this is good, let's jump onto Thread and let's see how we can use that for our business. There are others who will say, okay, let's keep cool. Let's see how others are going to, start and how it benefits their businesses. And based on that, adoption levels grow. So it is actually good that the practice and the practitioners themselves know that PR practice will not be as it is today. Today, we are on something webinar. Tomorrow, it could change. And even look at, particularly in Ghana, where the practice of PR became more of a profession from 1971 by the formation of the Institute of Public Relations, when before that, PR was just a one way of information, using press release to just share information to some group of people. The trends have changed now. And in today's practice, we see more of the advancements of technology, where any PR person or a media person who refuses to go with the growth of technology lags behind, and you don't carry all your audiences across. We've also seen not just about the technology, the consumers themselves, the target audience themselves. There are changes in terms of how they consume information. And so we are also looking at how you can even use the technology to segment your audiences so that you can give them the kind of information they need. The fact that technology is growing, is becoming a new trend, does not necessarily mean that it is a one fit for all. There are some still very good, influential audiences that will leverage news from the traditional media. So the traditional media still has its own role to play, whereas the digital media also has its own role to play. And that also dovetails into what we call in the content marketing, influencer marketing, and of course, how the story is told. A typical media person today, or put it differently, a typical PR person today would want to involve storytelling, enriching your audiences, as opposed to just a one-way kind of, document you send to them. You want to see how you can tell a story around your brand and how that storytelling could change the hearts and minds towards your operations. All of these are exciting trends coming up into the future. And particularly, maybe my last point would be that the practitioners themselves would also have to change with the trend. In many organizations today, we have new roles being created. Some job titles are now digital communication strategy, social media manager. Hitherto, we never had these kind of job roles. And so if you want to be a practitioner in the media space or in the PR space, you've got to have a grasp of digital tools. And once you have that, segment the audience to see what kind of audiences can be reached with this, that, and the other one. That way, when you add storytelling to it, you are able to, properly impact the target audiences. I hope that will be helpful, Wilfred.
Thank you, Komla. I know how passionate you are about the media, and it's very exciting listening to you discuss the media in Ghana and Africa and these trends that are shaping the practice. For all of you joining us wherever you are, you can ask your questions on the comment section. Also know that we are streaming this event live on Facebook, the Newmark Group. You can log on to Facebook too as well, or share the link to your friends to join so we can have an interesting discussion. But Komla, one thing that you said that caught my attention is the growth in technology, especially the shift from traditional media to digital media. And this is where I come to you, Alex. Because of self-generated content, we are likely to see situations of fake news and misinformation. What role does PR play in maintaining trust and credibility for organizations with these new trends that are coming up that have the probability or propensity to create fake news and misinformation?
Thank you very much, fellow panelists. Thank you very much, Newmark, for organizing this important conversation that we're having today. To respond to you, Wilfred, public relations plays a critical role, especially when we are a conveyor of information. We give information to various publics and various stakeholders, and media becomes one of them, and also our own channels becomes sources of information. And therefore, as public relation practitioners or organizations, on behalf of either our clients or communicating on our behalf, we have the responsibility to ensure that the information that we're communicating out there is authentic, number one, it's trustworthy, it can be verified. And this is where, when you look at the evolution of digital platforms, today we see a lot of fake platforms, trying to propagate information that probably is not right. And so, as a source of information, from a public relations perspective, you must ensure that you can be trusted from your source of information or from the source of from the platform that you're trying to communicate from, because for once you've seen bots, being created from a technology perspective, bots being created, propagating information that probably sometimes is not right. And this is where now we come into the issue of misinformation and disinformation. And we see this a lot during political campaigns, and especially those who do political communication usually suffer this kind of tragedy, because you're fighting all kind of sources of information that are trying to have to establish platforms that can be trusted, that people can say that this information came from Newmark. If we look at the social media platforms for Newmark, they are communicating authentic information, and we can trust that particular information, and they can be held accountable. And I think before Elon Musk decided to decide who is verified and who is not, at least we enjoyed that verification of platforms, and it authenticized those platforms, and therefore when one wanted to verify that information, they would go to certain platforms, whether it is a website, whether it's a Twitter handle, whether it's a Facebook page, or whether it's a LinkedIn page, and they'd be like, this information is actually coming from this particular source. And therefore, continuous communication, consistency on your platform also gives you that authenticity, because if you post once and then you disappear, probably somebody will think that somebody is running that platform for their own on selfish gain. But for consistency purposes, we know that this is an authentic source for us to continue confirming that this information is right in the off by an authority that we know, that there's some form of responsibility that can be accounted for from that particular organization, especially in terms of leadership.
All right, Alex, I like how you stressed on authenticity and communicating consistently. But before I come to Gilbert, I saw Natasha, your hand up. You wanted to contribute to, I think, something Komla said.
Yeah, thank you. Just one insight regarding media landscape. For years now, media coverage is no longer a critical key success factors in the offer that we provide to the clients. Clients expect more engagement with the community, with the society, and not just media coverage. So in this world of real-time communication, we have witnesses the diminution of the reliance on traditional media channels in the public relations offers. And one key success factor of having a global network is that more than 15 years ago, when we went to the United States with the members based there, they were already keen on working with social media. In Europe, it was very surprising. They said, we will never use social media in our public relation tools. Less than 10 years ago, after we all had to implement social media campaign, but we were aware we had the possibility to have training from the Americans, because they knew that this social media will change the way we will interact with the society. And now we are working with journalists with more real-time communication than just press releases. It's exchange of ideas, invitation to think out of the box, as Maureen said. So the relation with journalists has been changed, not only on the content, but also on the dynamic of the relation.
All right, thank you, Natasha. On the issue of content, one thing that has come up is the use of AI. And Gilbert, this is where I'll come to you. Yesterday, we had a fierce argument about AI and job losses. My question to you is that, are we at the risk of losing our jobs because of AI?
Well, allow me first of all to reflect a little bit on some of the perspectives from my co-panelists, particularly to build on what Maureen said and how she explained the process that Afra has gone through to not just overcome the challenges posed by a major global crisis such as COVID-19, but most importantly, how to build back better, not just the association, but also the voice it carries through the sector globally. One of the, having been very closely associated with Afra, having followed everything that she talked about, and having learned quite a few of the measures that they took just from her presentation just now, one of the things is becoming extremely clear, and it connects to the question you just asked. Number one, strategic communications and public relations is first and foremost a leadership function. It has to start from the top. For the key success factor, in my view, must be leadership engagement in building the success metrics and the objectives and the aims, and then maintaining leadership's engagement in strategic communications and positioning up to the point where leadership can see why it's important, and then they can support various initiatives. And that, in my view, has been the case at Afra, because Maureen, you mentioned how the change in leadership also led to that shift in focus. And this is very critical. In fact, it's very fundamental for the continent and globally speaking, because many organizations tend to think that strategic communications is a support function, and therefore you can cut its budget, you can restructure it, and you can send anyone there even if they are not equipped, even if they don't have the skill sets. Basically, it's one of those functions that doesn't tend to get leadership attention. But I think we have seen, even from the examples we've heard, we have seen that if it is done right and it has leadership buy-in, the cumulative effect it can have on an organization and a company are just amazing. They're significant. But the key thing is that leadership engagement needs to be there. And I want to commend Afra and many other organizations for having taken that route. And the biggest recommendation I would make, and I would fully support, is that us as professionals should go out of our way to sensitize as many leaders that we come across on the importance of executive and leadership involvement in strategic communications, because without that, it's very difficult to go forward and to make PR and strategic communications achieve the goals for which it exists. And one of the things I also like is the fact that PR has to be defined accurately. It has to, if you think that PR is just about pushing things to the press, that's a very reductionist way. I think the fact that in the case of Maureen and many other organizations that I'm sure we all have, the fact that it is defined as a tool or as a process to build trust-based relationships is very key, because one of the challenges is when it becomes associated with, for example, advertising. Advertising is really just about creating awareness around something, hoping that there'll be a desire to consume it. But in the case of PR, trust has to be the center point, and you can't build trust without understanding, and you can't build understanding without building strong identities. And obviously, strong identities are only built when you have a clearly articulated, massive transformational purpose. And most organizations, coming to my third recommendation, most organizations don't tend to sit down and reflect on what their purpose is in a given period of time. And therefore, they just do PR for the sake of promotion. But the authenticity that Alex was talking about tends to fall off, because when you are not very clear about the purpose for which you are in existence, it's very, very difficult to actually do strategic comms right. Which leads me to the question you ask of how AI is likely to affect the strategic comms field. I think there is a lot of conversation around AI, but based on the interactions that I've had, even from what I've heard this morning, it's very clear that strategic communications is, if you don't limit it to the tactical aspects of writing and content production, and you actually look at it from a stakeholder engagement point of view, then I don't think we need to worry about AI. In fact, in a recent conversation with Natasha, one of the things she told me was that in Europe, most of the organizations that they are interacting with, sorry, I'm paraphrasing you, Natasha, but most of the organizations that you are working with are saying, you know, we need more strategic thinking from the agency, from the PR professional. Now we need more direction, because we have a more efficient process to deal with the content. So my feeling is that as an industry, as professionals, we simply have to start focusing a lot more on stakeholder engagement, building trust, strategic direction, and use these tools to become much faster, much more efficient. So in that sense, I don't see a job loss risk. I see more of a job transformation opportunity. I think most of us have to become much more strategic in how we think and use the opportunity of these tools to become much faster at doing the tactical things. And this will free us to have more time and more bandwidth to do much more strategic thinking, to look more into the future, and to bring a lot of nuanced perspectives to our clients. So in a nutshell, that's really how I see that situation evolving with AI and these other tools that we see around us.
Great. Thank you, Gilbert. And for participants who have joined us from all over Africa, the various African countries, we encourage you that just ask your questions in the Q&A box. And then when it's time for Q&A, we can pose these questions to the panelists for answers or to these questions. But Gilbert, having mentioned Natasha's name, Natasha, I would want to find out in the use of AI, how can public relations professional successfully negotiate cultural sensitivities and adjust their communication techniques to meet varied audience? I ask this question because you have worked so much with the European community, and the cultural sensitivity and the communication techniques may differ from what we do in Africa here. How can public relations professionals adjust their communication approaches with the use of AI to negotiate cultural sensitivities?
First, as I always tell my clients, the tools are neutral. So it's just a new possibility, a new opportunity, as Maureen said, to engage more with people. As was said, in today's interconnected world, what will make the difference is how much authenticity and transparency you will put in your communication, because we all have the tools. As Alexander said, we have to fight against disinformation. So my recommendation as public affairs professional is always to work on the content, quality content, because it will generate trust. And this content can be partly generating by artificial intelligence, but the design, the outreach to the people has to be made by humans, because as public affairs professionals, we love being in contact with people, and this contact has to be built on trust, because the clients, but also the society now, with the empowerment of consumer, they are expecting from the brands and trust values. So we have to propose them craft narrative built on trust, on what they can offer as unique value proposition for the clients, regardless where they are based. And this is also one recommendation that can be used for African public relations, is that by joining a global partnership, you can have both approach, a global vision, for instance, also pooling of talents. In the PRGN, we have this motto, and I think you use it, as touching hearts and minds days and nights, because we are playing with the time zone. For instance, when I have a contract with a client, I can use talents in the United States or in Asia. I send my request at the end of my day, they work overnight, and when I go back the day after, the job is done, so I can fulfill my clients with more efficient and faster content productions. And I promote this with new tools. It could be artificial intelligence or other possibilities. But what we really have to think of as public relations is how much advice we can provide to the clients to be honest in their communication.
Great, Natasha, thank you very much. This is also to remind everybody who have joined us that I've asked that you put your questions at the comment section, the Q&A session. We will ask these questions when it's time for Q&A, so please ensure that you have asked your questions appropriately. Alex, Natasha has spoken about trust, and the erosion of public trust has become a concern for many brands. Essentially, investing in initiatives that ensure public trust is an area of public relations that practitioners most value. What do you think companies need to do to maintain or regain public trust?
First of all, we should find out why are brands losing public trust. That is where we should start from. Because the first thing that brands do or organizations do, sometimes they fail to deal with issues at the beginning. They grow from smaller issues or issue management to bigger crises. And in fact, when you talk about public trust, you go back to crisis communication. And so I usually tell a lot of clients that the first thing you should do is diagnose your vulnerabilities. Find out what are the issues that could be possible dangers to your brand. And sometimes we fail to do this. And so by the time you diagnose your vulnerabilities, you are able to know when to respond when this crisis happens. And you realize that today, a lot of these crises happen online. It just starts with one customer who is very disgruntled and his issue is not sorted out. And sometimes they don't even have a lot of followers, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook. And the issue just becomes fire, and it becomes bushfire, and it goes out of hand. So public trust goes back to organizations checking on their vulnerabilities and issues that are affecting them at that particular time, or issues that might affect them in the near future to come. So once you have this kind of the communication strategy that will be able to help to deal with some of these issues. But sometimes also say that
hello, Alex. Okay, I think we've lost Alex a bit. But
public relations complement.
Hello, Alex. We lost you a bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, I think it's a connection issue. So I'm saying that public relations complement what the business does. And therefore, if you have issues within your business, you need not to sweep them under the carpet and wait for public relations practitioners to come and gloss over them or try to beautify the issues or trying to spin it as we've always been trying to make things look good. We are moved away from that kind of public relations, by the way. We deal with, the businesses need to deal with the issues that they have. If it is a customer issue, please deal with the customer issues. If it is an issue about service provision, deal with the service provision. If it is an issue about your board, you know, so, and that comes back to stakeholder management. What are the issues that affect the different key stakeholders within your business? And you need to look at all these stakeholders based on their influence and power. It goes back to those who've done masters in terms of who has high power, high influence as a stakeholder within your business. And therefore, this public trust does not just come in one day. It means that it has been built up for a long time and it has been neglected, or it has not been taken serious of. And this also goes back to what Gilbert was talking about, where strategic communication is taken very seriously. And this is where I say that PR practitioners need to earn a seat at the table. That when issues are affecting an organization, it is easier to call your agency or to call your PRO and seek for advice. For the longest time, I always say that we've always been banner carriers and events managers rather than people who give value at the table. And this is what we need to seek, that we give value to the boards, we give value to, we are counselors. When you're talking about strategic communication, you're also a strategic counselor. You're just like an advocate, or you're just like a doctor, that your value needs to be felt within the boardroom when you are issuing a strategic communication advisory. And therefore, when it comes to this erosion, yes, understand your stakeholders, what their issues are, and deal with them. And number two, is sort of like set a strategic plan that can be used in terms of reaching out to your publics, because now we're talking about public trust and you're dealing with different publics. So your strategic plan needs to be in such a way that it communicates to those publics, whether internally or externally, to ensure that that relationship is actually enhanced, and what is causing that public trust to go away is actually sorted. And the other idea is to be very futuristic in terms of monitoring the issues that are happening today and how they could have an impact in the future. And that's also where strategic communication comes in, to be able to analyze some of the issues that have bedeviled the organization today and might even tomorrow, and how you deal with them. Thank you.
Great. I'm very excited how you have stressed that insisting that PR has to be a management function, so that when organizations are faced with difficulties, they can just pull out their public relations professional, but not sideline them. But Kamala, Alex has spoken about how to use strategy, public relations strategy, in building public trust. How can PR persons use the media in building public trust for their brands?
Well, thank you, Wilfred. So the media, of course, today, the conversation we're having, we can categorize the media into two main groups: the traditional media and, of course, the new media. And it's important for us all to understand that the two play very complementary roles. I have sat in a lot of, communication class or some lectures, and some would want to assume that with the coming of the new media, there's going to be the extension of the traditional media. And I believe, or my thoughts are that the two would always play a very complementary roles. Someone who is in the traditional media, we're talking about the television, the newspapers, and the radio, and the likes of that, would have to master the skills of the use of the new media. And when Gilbert was talking about AI, people may not lose jobs. I would want to even go further and say that if you are in the traditional media space and you master the use of the new media or the technologies, you will not lose your job. You would have to also be on the job with the coming of AI, with the coming of technology, to see how you can use that to complement the work you do. It is only then that you can serve the interests of many of your audiences. And the conversation has to also go to understand that today, any person who is in PR wants to deploy some PR tools. The first consideration for you would be to segment your audiences. And there are different levels of audiences we have. There are some that are actually still on traditional media. And so if you want to just leave those people out, to just concentrate on your audiences who are just on the, technological space, you may be missing the gap in all of that. Then again, media practice, where you'd have like in Ghana at 7 p.m. we have newscasts, where the journalists tell us the news of the day and all of that, used to be a one-way kind of conversation. Today, most media outlets have put their news items on social media. And so on Facebook, when I'm in the office or I'm even driving sometime, I can just put my phone somewhere and I'm watching Facebook, and that is the news segment of a typical traditional media outlet. With that, there is a two-way kind of communication. You see directly people who are putting comments under those, news outlets for people to, or for businesses to do kind of, a perception study to see what people are saying about their stories that are any. So the good thing there is that PR persons are able to get immediate feedback when you're able to incorporate new media in the traditional media. Typically also, in times of, say, crisis, you are able to quickly get on social media to see what people are saying, what your target audience are saying about the particular crisis. And of course, once you put in any information there as well, you get lots of people who also get to listen to whatever you put out on social media. And so definitely there's a lot of way of integration of how we can use this media to our advantage. There's another important thing in terms of PR practice where you want to talk about, getting required data which can help you in order to deploy a particular campaign. The new media or technology has made it so easy so that you can quickly get to know how your audiences are behaving, what kind of conversation they're having, and what interests them the most. And with this data-driven PR, which is one of the essentials of technology for the success of PR, it's important to see how we can leverage on that to properly deploy our communication. Communication or PR practice ought not to just be the usual kind of, one way. You think you've written a very good press release, you've gotten a very good spokesperson to go and speak, and you've gotten a good news story, the media have published it, and that is all. You've got to go beyond that to see how you're able to do all of that. Of course, one of the key things that PR people also do is media monitoring. Interesting thing is that with the technology now, you can be in your office and do your media monitoring to just get on technology to see what people are saying about you. And that is, if all of this happen, you'll see how now public relations is seen in the workplace. And again, I think one of my co-panelists mentioned that PR is not just about sending stories to the media. It goes beyond that, when many business leaders see PR as equivalent to media relations. Media relations is just one out of the lot of vehicles that we deploy, and media relations. Of course, events are also one of the tools you can use. And now, if you want to be an event person and a PR, you have to see how you can integrate technology into the organization of your events. If you want to just do traditional tent and PA system, all of that, you may not be very successful if you are, into the event space. So all in all, key thing for me, or the key takeaway for me, is that traditional media, new media are complementary. If you understand how they use that, it helps you most particularly to customize or to personalize your messages for your target audience. And if you're able to properly use it to that, you would be achieving the kind of objective you have in setting out to communicate. Mind you, at a level, basic level, we say that communication ends when there's a feedback. And so once you do not have a feedback, you just do a one-way communication. What it means is that it's a gap. And technology helps us to get that kind of feedback quickly, and to also help us to plan remedial communications for purposes of deploying PR. Wilfred.
All right, thank you, Komla. I'm excited that you've mentioned the events. When it comes to the Q&A session, there is a question on event which I would ask you to handle. But I see Maureen, your hand up. But before I call in Maureen, if you are joining us, if you are just joining us, we have discussed key trends in the public relations landscape. And the trends we have identified are the fragmentation of the media, growth in technology and digital communication, strong affiliations and partnerships, and then the value of authenticity. So Maureen, can you end with that so we can go to the Q&A session?
Thank you, Wilfred. And we've talked about the issue of trust, which has been well articulated, and also how an organization can tackle false information through the power of PR. So allow me to also add in a very important factor, which is reputation. Reputation is a very important but an intangible asset for an organization because it leads to competitive advantage, and it also signals to stakeholders about the attractiveness of the organization. And then these stakeholders are then able to engage with it, be it customers. And for the example of AFRA, we have key stakeholders who actually apply on the outcome of our actions. For example, looking at governments, investors, sponsors, partners, members. So we cannot negate the power of PR in keeping and building a reputation, because if you don't handle building a good reputation, which took too long to build, actually it takes so long to build a reputation, one incident or one instance that is mishandled could actually kill a company's reputation. So which is why I wish to also add in, we need to have PR strategy, not just at the management level, but to go further on and have it even in the company's strategic plan, be it your 5-year or 10-year strategic plan. PR needs to be a key component added therein, because we need to balance all these key components. And if we don't look at putting our reputation as a key factor, it could be mishandled and we could actually have serious issues to build it. It takes a long time to build a reputation. Thank you.
Great. Just because you've mentioned PR as a management function, I have a question here for you from Marvin Ajiman, who says, I want to know what you would do when organizations doesn't recognize PR as a management function.
If it was for me as an individual in an organization, I think the best thing would be to also in the organization's strategic meetings or even at the board level, is to bring in a third opinion of an agency. What I can give as an example of AFRA, for many years, we did not have a working relationship with a PR firm. And we saw the difference once we got to bring on board a PR firm. It was like day and night, a total 360. So it will be important, what I can give as a word of advice, to bring in a third opinion. And when you bring in a third opinion on the importance and the impact that having a PR strategy can have on management objectives, or even how a company can effectively implement its mandate, then this is how that can be taken on board. Okay. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, great. So Komla, this is a question which I indicated that I'll direct to you. And this is from Odi. He says he wants to know what the role events plays in PR, and should a company consider it to be a key part of their strategic PR communication?
Yes, Wilfred, companies should consider events as one of the very important, tools in PR planning. Events serve different purposes depending on the kind of, PR or company that you are working in. For example, some people would want to, or some companies would want to deploy events for brand awareness purposes, for people, to see what the brand looks like. There are others who would want to do events to launch a new product. Of course, there are others that would do events just for an attention from their, customers. So depending on what your aim is, definitely events help. For us in the media space as well, events also serve as a way of getting media to see what we do, to also write good stories about whatever we do. The most important thing in all of this is that events also tell the audience, those who participate in the event, those who see the event on television or other media landscape, the kind of branding, the kind of company that you are dealing with. And so it's important that those who are into events have a very excellent way of executing events. And so if I go to event and I see that the whole event is run seamlessly, and so this is a good company. This is what the brand identity looks like for the company. If I go to event and every speaker would have to, tap on the microphone, testing mic 1, 2, let me see if the microphone is working. I get the impression that it's not a very smooth event, and that also translates into the brand identity of the company. And so events are excellent ways of, telling the brand story. You must ensure that you execute it well for the purposes of brand building, and also ensure that every element of the event is properly tightened so that you deploy a very good event for the purposes of, the aim for which the event is handled. And I know a lot of companies actually who make events as one of the important things in companies. What I advise is that when you are within an organization and you have events, don't just think that events are just putting some tent or some things together. Get professionals to work through the starting to the end for you so that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted so that you can get the best feeling out of it. So yes, it is the case that events are one of the vehicles that PR is deployed.
Okay, thank you, Komla. Alex, I have a question for you here, and this is from the DASW. He says there are some organizations that come out with very good PR, but still they do not get to their target audience or customers. What do you advise they do?
To say that, I'm just trying to understand the paradox of it, because for you to have good PR, it means that you're using the right tools, you're using the right channels to communicate to your audience. You've done your audience segmentation the way it's supposed to be done, and therefore you are able to reach to them. But in a situation whereby an organization is not able to reach their audience, it means they're not, first of all, getting their audience where they're supposed to be. For instance, today, the rise of millennials and Gen Zs, their way of consuming information is totally different today. These guys don't even read newspapers. These guys don't even listen to radio. They don't even watch TV for that matter. So where do you get them? You get them on social media platforms. You have to create content that is shareable, content that you are able to share with them in their spaces. And so you have to understand their psyche and where they operate, their behavior, how they consume that information is and even events, what kind of events do they go to be able to reach them, So the idea is to, first of all, understand your audience and then understand what channels they use for communication, and then design and develop the right content that is relatable to them and that is relevant to them. And therefore you're able to reach them. Thank you.
Great. Gilbert, I have a question for you here, which says that what are some of the factors aside target audience would you look at when choosing your media vehicle?
So I like the question, but I think it's very close to what Alex has just tackled, and I feel he has really done justice to that, because targeting the audience is the holy grail. That's really where you have to start from. What I could add is that you really have to start, in fact, before you even get to the stage of identifying the target, you have to start from a point of view of defining what your big purpose is. And this is something I really stress, particularly when I'm dealing with the leadership cadres of an organization, because a lot of the times, like we've discussed today, many organizations start from the tactical side of PR, which is where they're actually saying, okay, we have an event, we need to promote it. We have an announcement, we need to push this out. But when you don't start from a place of asking yourself, what is the purpose? What is the agenda of this particular organization? You can actually even get the other things wrong, because for you to even target correctly, you need to start from a position of agenda, from a position of strategic intent. And this is not just about the sales targets, for example. That can be part of the mix of objectives. But I believe the key question to ask oneself is, why should anyone care about me beyond the direct benefit they have from what I'm doing? For example, when you think about, say, Apple or Nike or any of the big brands that we consume on a day-to-day basis, beyond the actual direct use of that particular product, why should we care otherwise? Is it because they are helping humanity to become much more efficient at evolving, at using technology? Is it because basically that reflection needs to take place? Because once it takes place and you say, I want this organization to be known subliminally for helping humanity solve XYZ challenge, then you build the relevance side of the strategy, because relevance is really not going to be just about the product. It's also going to be about the broader challenge that the product is actually contributing to. And most of the times we just don't think about that. And I think organizations like AFRA have done a very good job of starting from a place of really why should people even care about the airline industry? And we have clients in other sectors as well, telecommunications. Why should people care about telecommunications beyond the fact that you can pick up the phone and call someone? There is the fact that when you call someone, you can actually solve a crisis. You can send money to someone who's sick in hospital. So the actual service being provided by the telecom company is not really where the relevance is. The relevance is in the ability of a person to solve a major challenge in their lives. So therefore, the telecom company cannot reduce itself to just the mere fact of buying credit and airtime and calling. It has to connect itself to the broader implications of that particular feature of the product. So I would say I would start from there. That needs to start. In fact, in many executive sessions that I've had, I would ask, if I asked your mom to tell me what you as an organization are all about, what do you think they would tell me? And to be honest with you, the organizations or the leaders I was speaking to, they would give me an answer that surprises them. Because once they think about it, they realize, my goodness, my mom would actually not have the right answer to that question, or at least they don't have, or she doesn't have the answer I want them to have. So then we start working from that place and say, okay, which answer should we be working with? So before even targeting the stakeholder categories, I would start from there. That's a key factor. And then go into the stakeholder mapping, and then based on that, choose the various media channels or media vehicles as Marvin has put it. So I think that's how I would tackle that question. There are perhaps a few other factors, but I think those are the key ones I would like to share.
Great. Thank you very much, Gilbert. It's exciting to have you all on call today to discuss this topic, key trends in an ever-changing PR landscape. All too soon, we have come to the end of today's webinar. I do not see any questions at the end for me to ask again, and I'm very excited that you all have joined this call, including all those who I was not able to introduce by virtue of time. But for our panelists, we were joined in today by Gilbert Manirakiza, who is the founder and CEO of the Newmark Group. We had Natasha Clarak, who is the Director General of Atinora. We also had Alex Owuti, who is the head of Alexander PR. We also had Komla Bwami, a comms consultant in Ghana and the Director of Communications for the Zipline Group. We also have Maureen, who has been with us on call from AFRA. Panelists, I'm very, very much excited. It's been a privilege to host you on this discussion, and I'm sure the participants that joined all over the African countries have been able to get some idea as to the key trends that are shaping the public relations practice, both in their country and the other countries, because the team that we have assembled have been diverse from the various African countries. Thank you very much. And then I wish you all the best in the week as we move on and practice in the public relations area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wilfred.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.